Okay, let's dive into a really fascinating area today. Um, the connection, the real link between our genes and, well, how we perform physically.
Absolutely. We've got some great source material here, a detailed scientific review and FAQ. Lots to dig into.
And our goal really is to pull out the key insights from these documents for you. We want to understand how your genetic makeup, your blueprint, so to speak, might influence things like muscle type, endurance, all that.
Yeah, and what the science in these papers is actually telling us about specific genes, which ones seem linked to, different kinds of athletic success.
But it's crucial right off the bat to say genetics isn't everything, not by a long shot.
Oh, definitely not. Athletic success is so complex. You've got training, nutrition, mindset, environment.
And then genetics. It provides that sort of underlying potential, maybe influencing strength, endurance, muscle fiber type, lung capacity.
And that's what sports genetics tries to unravel. Identifying those genes, figuring out how they work, maybe seeing if someone has a predisposition. The sources mention, around 250 genetic regions linked to performance. It's a big field.
Wow, 250. Okay. So maybe let's group some of these key genes, like start with the ones really tied to muscle power and structure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great way to tackle it. When you talk power, speed, ACTN3 often comes up first. It's even nicknamed the gene for speed.
ACTN3, right. Heard of that one. What's the deal with it? Why is it so important for power?
Well, it codes for a protein, alpha-actinin 3. And this protein is really crucial in your fast-twitch muscle fibers.
The explosive ones.
Exactly. The ones you need for sprinting, jumping, lifting heavy. And there's a key variation in this gene. You get different versions, alleles, right? So there's one variant, the R variant, that lets you make this functional protein.
Okay, so having the R helps with those power fibers.
That's what the sources strongly suggest. Power athletes, sprinters, they tend to have at least one copy of this R variant much more often.
And then there's the other version, the X variant.
Right. And if you get two copies of the X variant, you don't make that functional protein.
And that's more common in endurance athletes.
Yeah, studies consistently show that. Maybe its absence offers some kind of metabolic edge for longer events. It's a classic example of different genetic setups potentially favoring different strengths.
Fascinating. Different tools for different jobs, like you said. What else fits in this muscle power group?
Myostatin, MSTN. That's another big one mentioned in the sources.
Myostatin. That rings a bell. It controls muscle growth.
Pretty much. It acts like a brake, regulating how much muscle mass you develop.
An internal regulator, okay.
Exactly. And variations in this MSTN gene can affect how strong that brake is. Some variations might mean less braking action.
Leading to potentially more muscle mass and strength.
That's the idea. And studies comparing powerlifters or sprinters to, say, endurance folks or just the general population, they often find different patterns of these MSTN variants.
Got it. So ACTN3 for fiber function, MSTN for growth limits. Anything else for muscle performance itself?
ANPD1 is mentioned. It's involved in energy metabolism, especially during those really high-intensity bursts. Think fast-twitch fibers working hard.
Okay.
There's a specific mutation, C34T, that's discussed. Carrying it might impair performance in those short, intense efforts. And guess what?
The more common version is found in power athletes.
You got it. Highly frequent in power athletes across different sports, according to the studies cited.
And CKMM. Saw that too.
Yeah, CKMM, muscle-specific creatine kinase. Other key enzyme for generating energy, ATP, right there in the muscle cells. Also more active in fast-twitch fibers.
So variations there could affect energy supply for power.
Seems likely. The sources point to an AG polymorphism and studies on combat athletes, rowers. They show different genotype distributions compared to controls. It hints at its role.
And the IGF genes, IGF-1 and IGF-2, they sounded like they were about growth too.
Absolutely. Insulin-like growth factors. Crucial for muscle development growth, but also repair after exercise. How your muscles adapt to training.
So variations could mean you respond differently to weightlifting, for instance?
Potentially, yes. Different variations in IGF-1 and IGF-2 might influence muscle hypertrophy getting bigger and recovery. The studies mentioned compare various athletes, finding different frequencies of certain IGF variants, suggesting they play a part in that training response.
One study even linked a specific IGF-2 variant to top sprinters and jumpers?
That's right. The RS680GG polymorphism shows up often in those elite power athletes.
Okay, so wrapping up this first group, it's like a genetic toolkit for the muscle engine, fiber type with ACTN3, growth potential with MSTN and the IGFs, and energy management with ANPD1 and CKMM.
Nicely put. A toolkit for building, empowering the engine. Now, should we shift to the Let's call it the long-distance engine. Endurance, metabolism, fuel.
Yeah, let's do that. ACE seems like a key one there. You mentioned blood pressure earlier.
Definitely. ACE, the angiotensin I-converting enzyme. It's fundamental in endurance genetics research. Regulates blood pressure, fluid balance, all critical for going the distance.
And it has those two versions, I and D.
Correct. Insertion and deletion alleles. And the pattern is pretty interesting. The D allele linked perhaps to a higher ACE activity.
We said that often shows up in power athletes.
Yes, consistently across many studies cited. But the I allele linked to lower ACE activity, that's the one associated with better endurance performance.
So lower ACE might mean better blood flow, maybe more efficient muscles for endurance.
That's the working hypothesis the research supports. Potentially better oxygen delivery, maybe more type I slow-twitch fibers. The I allele frequency is often significantly higher in elite endurance athletes.
It's amazing how one gene can branch out like that. What about fuel? How the body uses energy over time? PPRE was in the list.
Yeah, Proxys, proliferator activated receptor alpha, key player in lipid metabolism. How you burn fat for fuel.
Which is crucial for endurance, right? Using fat efficiently.
Exactly. PPRE is found more in those slow-twitch, endurance-focused muscle fibers, and endurance training boosts it. Since fat is a major fuel for long exercise, being good at using it helps.
And are there gene variations linked to being better at burning fat?
The sources discuss a specific variation, a GC polymorphism. The idea is that one version, the G allele, might be linked to higher PPRE levels, potentially giving an edge in endurance.
And the C allele might favor using glucose, maybe better for shorter, intense stuff.
That's the suggestion. Studies looking at athletes in different sports or positions find variations in how common these GG, GC, or CC genotypes are.
Interesting. And the ADRB genes, beta-adrenergic receptor.
Right, the ADRB family. They're involved in how your body responds to exercise metabolically and cardiovascularly. ADRB2 impacts energy use, fat mobilization. It's a candidate for influencing endurance.
And ADRB3.
That one's linked to activating fat tissue, breaking down fat, generating heat. There's a specific variation mentioned, TRP64-ARG. Some studies cited have actually linked that specific variant in ADRB3 to elite endurance performance. So small changes in these receptors could tweak how your body handles sustained effort.
Okay, covered power, covered metabolic endurance. What about getting oxygen where it needs to go? HIF-1A and VEGF sounded relevant there.
Absolutely critical. HIF-1A, hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha. It's like a master switch for how cells cope when oxygen gets low, which happens in muscles during hard exercise.
How does it help?
It triggers things like angiogenesis, building new blood vessels, manages glucose use, even helps make more red blood cells. All about boosting oxygen supply and use.
And variations in HIF-1A affect oxygen consumption.
That's what the research suggests. A specific variation, Pro582-VAR, is linked to differences in oxygen use and endurance traits. Studies on elite rowers who need massive oxygen capacity show different patterns of these variants.
Makes sense. And VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, sounds like blood vessels for sure.
It's the main driver of angiogenesis, building those tiny capillaries in muscles. Endurance training ramps this up massively.
More capillaries mean more oxygen delivery.
Exactly. VEGF helps build that network. Variations in the VEGF gene itself, especially in the control region, can affect how much VEGF you make, and that impacts how well you adapt to aerobic training and improve your VO2 max.
So your genes could influence how well you build that capillary network from training?
Precisely. Studies show different frequencies of VEGF variants among athletes with different aerobic capacities.
NOS3 was another one linked to blood flow rate, nitric oxide?
Yes, NOS3. It makes nitric oxide, or NO. NO is vital. It helps blood vessels relax and widen.
Improving blood flow to muscles.
Critically important for delivering oxygen and fuel. NO also affects mitochondria and muscle power. Variations in the NOS3 gene can change how much NO is available.
And that affects endurance.
Oh, yeah. The sources mention several NOS3 variations, and studies on rowers, triathletes, distance runners find different distributions of these compared to power athletes or controls. It points to optimizing blood flow for long efforts.
Okay, one more pair, NRF1 and NRF2.
Nuclear respiratory factors. These are key for mitochondrial biogenesis.
Building new mitochondria, the cell's power plants.
Exactly. Endurance training heavily stimulates these genes. More mitochondria, more efficient mitochondria, means better aerobic energy production.
So they help build better energy factories in response to training.
That's the idea. And the sources highlight specific variations, particularly in NRF2, that seem linked to a better response to endurance training, like Certain variants correlate with better running economy improvements or bigger gains in oxygen uptake after a training block.
So some people might be genetically better responders to aerobic training because of these.
It suggests that, yes, their genetic profile might make them more adaptable through these NRF pathways.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. We've gone from muscle fiber types to fuel use to oxygen transport and even mitochondrial building. It really paints a picture of how many different biological systems are involved.
It really does. The complexity is immense.
But let's bring this back to you listening in, because seeing this huge list of genes, it could feel a bit like your fate is sealed, right?
And that's absolutely not the message here. It's so important to stress that. Genetics gives us insights into potential, maybe predispositions, why some people find certain activities easier, perhaps. But it is just one piece.
A really small piece sometimes compared to everything else. Training, nutrition, recovery, coaching, opportunity, just sheer determination.
Exactly. Those factors are incredibly powerful. They often determine if any genetic potential is even reached, let alone exceeded. Having a good genotype doesn't punch your ticket to the Olympics.
And having a less favorable one doesn't mean you can't excel.
Right.
Far from it.
Think of this information more as a way to understand why. Why do different people respond differently to the same workouts? Maybe genetics plays a role there. And maybe, down the line, these insights could help tailor programs better.
Personalize things a bit more based on someone's unique profile.
Potentially. Optimizing effort, maybe focusing recovery strategies. It's about understanding your own body better.
Yeah, maximizing your potential, whatever that might be, rather than feeling limited by what some gene test might say. It adds another layer to just how amazing and adaptable we are.
It's less like a rigid blueprint, more
Yeah.
like you have certain building materials. What you choose to build and how well you build it, that comes down to the plan and the effort.
So the big takeaway from this deep dive, our DNA has these variations linked to all sorts of athletic traits, power, endurance, you name it. Understanding these links is a huge, growing part of sports science. It gives us clues about the biological underpinnings of physical ability.
But it also really highlights that how those genetic differences actually play out depends on so much more than just the genes themselves.
Which leaves us with a really interesting thought, doesn't it? As we get better at reading these genetic tea leaves related to sport, how should we use that knowledge?
Yeah, ethically, practically.
Does it change how we spot talent, how we train people, how you approach your own fitness goals? Is knowing your genetic leanings empowering, helping you train smarter? Or could it, maybe unintentionally, create new questions about how much is biology versus just pure hard work?
It's a complex question,
Yeah.
and one we'll likely be grappling with more and more as the science advances.